The stars shimmered like ancient runes as the Zarathian scout vessel broke through the pale clouds of Earth's atmosphere. Silent and cloaked, it hovered above a snow-covered forest nestled deep in a mountain range humans call the Rockies. The ship, shaped like a darkened obsidian teardrop, pulsed faintly with energy, invisible to satellites and radars below. Inside, Vron adjusted the interface tendrils wrapped around his fingers. His eyes, glassy with bioluminescent film, flickered as data streamed into his neural cortex. Oxygen-rich, nitrogen-stabilized, he muttered. Gravitational field within tolerance. Ambient temperature sub-zero, but survivable. Biosigns numerous. Darwin, taller and less methodical, exhaled a sharp click through his mandibles. Numerous is insufficient. I need behavioral profiles. Selleck hovered near the viewport, her elongated body still as ice. They're primitive, remember? Barely learned to split the atom. This will be an easy assessment. No assumptions, Vron warned. Command dispatched us to validate Earth's viability for long-term extraction. We observe first, report later. The ship lowered gently through the swirling snow, settling between towering pines. Their mission was simple: survey Earth's biosphere, observe its dominant species, and determine whether the planet posed any threat to a future Zarathian harvest fleet. As the outer hull dematerialized, the trio emerged, tall, sinewy beings cloaked in adaptive exosuits that bent light around their forms. They moved like ghosts through the forest, eyes scanning, limbs silent. Within minutes, they spotted them. Humans, 5 of them, dressed in insulated armor, moving through the trees in military formation. Weapons drawn, eyes alert. Vron signaled a pause. They're hunting, he noted. No, said Selleck. They're afraid. Darwin tilted his head. Of what? The answer came not in words, but in sound. A low, guttural growl rumbled across the snow like an avalanche on the edge of release. Trees creaked. Birds scattered in panic. The humans froze. One muttered something through his comms, and they shifted into a defensive semicircle, rifles raised toward the sound. The snow stirred. From the tree lean emerged a colossal grizzly bear. Not just large, monumental. It dwarfed the soldiers, its shoulders broader than a shuttle pod, claws like daggers. Steam coiled from its nostrils, and its eyes burned with feral intelligence. Darwin stepped forward, astonished. This is not in the archives. It's a mutation, Selleck guessed. Or something older, Vron murmured. They watched, enthralled, as the bear reared on its hind legs and let out a roar that shook the branches. The humans fell back. One fired. The bullet struck the bear's shoulder and did nothing but make it angrier. Then came a second figure. It emerged from the opposite ridge, tall as the bear, broader than any human, covered in dense, auburn hair. The creature's muscular form pulsed with raw power. It moved on 2 legs like a man, but its gait was something ancient, deliberate, primal. When it stepped into the clearing, even the bear hesitated. Impossible, Darwin whispered. It's bipedal. Not human, Selleck added. Not even close. The soldiers, caught between 2 titans, scrambled for cover. One tripped and lay gasping in the snow, watching as the 2 giants locked eyes. The humanoid's jaw clenched. It pounded a fist against its chest. The bear responded with a bellow. There was no ambiguity. This was not territorial defense. This was a challenge. Conflict display, Vron logged. This is a duel. And then they charged. Claw met fist with a thunderous crack that sent snow billowing into the air. The humanoid ducked under a swipe and landed a blow that knocked the bear sideways. But the creature recovered instantly and lunged again. Their battle was not chaotic, but ritualistic, almost sacred. Each move was precise, brutal, and honed by instincts older than words. Darwin leaned forward. They fight like gods. The soldiers fled into the trees, retreating from a battle that clearly did not belong to them. They were nothing here, observers in a land ruled by titans. Selleck recorded every movement, her eyes wide. If these creatures dominate the biosphere, then humanity is not the apex species, Vron finished. They stood in silence as the duel continued, snow-stained with blood and fur. Neither titan yielded. The bear struck with thunderous force, but the humanoid answered with the strength of 100 warriors. Trees splintered. The ground shook. Nature itself recoiled. Darren stepped back, unsettled. We were sent to study a developing species. Not this. We were wrong, Braun said. Earth's dominant life forms aren't the ones building cities. They're the ones buried in myth. The bear roared and lunged once more, but the humanoid met it head-on, gripping its neck and forcing it to the ground. The snow exploded beneath them as they rolled, the sounds of the fight echoing through the valleys like war drums. Then, for a moment, all went still. The bear, bloodied and dazed, struggled to rise. The humanoid stood over it, chest heaving, muscles twitching. It let out a final growl, not of hatred, but of recognition. The bear paused, ears twitching. Then, slowly, it turned and lumbered into the woods. The humanoid watched it go, then collapsed to one knee, breathing heavily. Darren took a step back. This planet is unfit for harvesting. Any species that spawns monsters like these. They're not monsters, Selleck interrupted. They're defenders. Braun closed his data stream. We leave at nightfall. The three figures vanished back into the trees as snow began to fall again, blanketing the blood-stained field in silence. High above, their ship pulsed once and rose, unseen. Below, in the forest's quiet hush, the humanoid turned its gaze skyward, and it waited. The wind howled through the evergreens as night descended, its icy breath weaving through the broken clearing like a specter. Blood darkened the snow where fur and flesh had collided just hours earlier. Tracks of impossible size scarred the earth, proof of a battle that defied all logic, all known biology. Yet the forest, ancient and dispassionate, was already beginning to erase the evidence. Nature, relentless in its cycles, sought balance. High above, the Zarathian ship hovered in absolute silence, concealed by its optical veil. Within its obsidian hull, tension pulsed like electricity. "We stay," Darwin said for the third time, pacing the narrow corridor, his digits twitching. "We've witnessed a unique interaction, dominant predator behavior in a non-technological apex species. This requires deeper observation." Selleck narrowed her eyes. "You saw how close we came to exposure. One stray glance, and that soldier would have captured our heat signatures. They were too terrified to look anywhere but forward," Darwin countered. "We are ghosts to them. This planet is a jungle of myths. Every moment we stay increases our understanding." Braun stood apart, arms folded, eyes locked on the live feed streaming from a silent drone circling the clearing. "We observe an event beyond classification," he said. "Neither the bear nor the biped match existing databases. Yet they displayed coordinated aggression, environmental adaptation, and signs of decision-making. They are not anomalies. They are part of the ecosystem." Selleck's jaw clenched. If that is true, then this planet is not a research outpost. It's a grave. Darwin turned to Braun. "One more day." Braun hesitated. His orders were clear: collect, classify, assess. No confrontation, no exposure. But the memory of that fight still echoed through his cortex. The ferocity, the restraint, the terrifying majesty. He gave a slow nod. "One more cycle, then we decide." The next morning broke sharp and blinding. Light pierced through crystalline branches, catching motes of ice in midair. The snow glistened like powder glass as a new group of human soldiers trudged toward the site. Heavily armed, wary, they spoke in clipped radio bursts. The original team had returned to their base with garbled footage and wild claims. Now a second team had been dispatched, this one with orders to confirm or contain whatever had happened. Braun observed them silently through the drone's lens. Their movements were precise, nervous, their breaths fogged in the cold, and their fingers lingered too long near their triggers. Then, without warning, the trees shifted. At first it seemed like the wind. A low hum, too deep to be mechanical, vibrated through the soil. The soldiers stopped, looking at one another. Then they raised their weapons in unison. From the edge of the clearing came the bear. It moved slower now, its fur matted with blood, its shoulder wounded but not broken. It lumbered forward with the grim patience of a creature born into battle. One of the soldiers swore. Another fired a warning shot that disappeared into the underbrush. They knew it was the same bear. There could be no mistaking that size, that aura of sheer presence. But what they didn't know was that the bear had returned not for food, nor for vengeance, but for reckoning. And from the opposite side of the glade, as if summoned by instinct, came the guardian. He stepped through the trees with a limp, one arm streaked with dried blood, a gash across his ribcage poorly clotted. Yet he stood tall, eyes locked on the bear, body taut with resolve. The soldiers turned in frantic disbelief, caught once again between legends come to life. 2 encounters, Selleck whispered aboard the ship. That's no coincidence. This is a ritual. They're finishing what they started, Darwin said, awe thick in his voice. We are witnessing the full measure of this ecosystem's law. The guardian growled, low and resonant, a sound not of anger, but of grim respect. The bear answered with a huff and lowered its head. No charges this time, no immediate violence, just a slow, spiraling dance as each circled the other, wary and deliberate. The soldiers, now paralyzed by fear and wonder, fell back into the trees. Some recorded, others prayed. Then the duel began again. This time was different, slower, smarter. The guardian moved with restraint, testing. The bear responded with tactical swipes, guarding its flank. They had learned from each other. Where before there was fury, now there was calculation. The forest floor became a battlefield and a stage. Each blow a statement, each dodge a memory of pain. Vron leaned closer to the display. They're evolving, not in biology, in behavior. The guardian struck the bear's injured shoulder. It reeled, roared, and countered with a paw that caught the guardian's torso, sending him crashing into a tree trunk. Snow cascaded down like a curtain. He rose, dazed, only to duck another swipe and tackle the bear to the ground. They rolled, massive bodies crashing through branches, drawing gasps from the soldiers watching from cover. Should we intervene? Selleck asked. Vron didn't answer. Vron. He turned to her, voice quiet. If we do, we may not survive. That's the level of power we're witnessing. One wrong move, and we're the prey. Back in the forest, the guardian was weakening. His injuries had slowed him, and the bear was relentless. But then came a shift, a change not in strength but in strategy. The guardian feinted, ducked a swipe, and instead of delivering a blow, he shoved the bear off balance. It fell hard. Before it could rise, the guardian placed a hand against its throat. He did not squeeze. He did not roar. He simply held. And then, with aching slowness, he stepped back. The bear rose, shaking, confused. It looked at the guardian, blood leaking from its flank. For a moment, the entire forest held its breath. Then the bear turned and walked away, not in defeat, but in understanding. The guardian remained still, watching until the bear vanished into the woods. Then, with a heavy breath, he dropped to one knee and rested his hand against the snow. He was alone now, not triumphant, not dominant, just alone. In the Zarathian ship, silence reigned. Selleck sat down. This planet is not what we thought. Darwin was already compiling a report. Combat resolution without death. They honor survival more than victory. That changes everything. Vron stood motionless, eyes locked on the final still frame. The guardian, kneeling alone in the snow, gazed once again drifting toward the sky. He knows, Vron whispered, not about us, but about something. He understands this world is not his alone. He's watching for what comes next. Should we report that? Vron shook his head slowly. No, not yet. Outside, the soldiers began emerging from cover. One lowered his rifle. Another dropped to his knees in silent awe. Their recordings would be confiscated, their stories buried beneath military secrecy. But the memory would burn behind their eyes for the rest of their lives. Back in orbit, the Zarathian ship began to rise, lifting silently into the upper atmosphere. Not in retreat, but in contemplation. And below, the guardian stood, bloodied and quiet, a sentinel beneath ancient stars, awaiting the next great shadow to fall. Night fell like a velvet shroud, pressing cold and thick against the snow-blanketed forest. The silence was no longer peaceful. It was waiting. A strange anticipation filled the air, a hush born of something deeper than mere weather. The animals had fled, their instincts whispering of unnatural things. Even the trees, tall and ancient, seemed to lean away from the center of the clearing, as if wary of what might come next. The guardian crouched beneath a rocky overhang, tending to his wounds with practiced hands. Steam rose from his skin in the moonlight, his breath misting as he exhaled slowly. Despite his pain, there was no fear in his eyes, only purpose. His gaze kept drifting skyward, to the stars slowly blinking into view above the jagged peaks. He knew they were watching. Above, the Zarathian ship hung motionless in the exosphere, cloaked in silence. Inside, tension rippled through the command deck. "He saw us again," Selleck said quietly, her tone uncertain. "Not directly, but he knows something's there." Darren grunted. "He senses patterns. A being who survives through observation will eventually perceive even what hides in shadow." "We need to leave," Selleck pressed. "The bear, the guardian, that was the beginning. There's more on this planet. Forces we don't understand." Braun didn't move. His eyes remained locked on the data streaming from their probes. He scrolled through heat maps, radiation readings, motion sensors, all calibrated to capture minute changes in the terrain below. But it wasn't the numbers that held him. It was the stillness in the Guardian's posture, a kind of alert reverence. "He's not just watching the stars," Braun said finally. "He's waiting for something, or someone." As if on cue, a new signal pierced the ship's sensors. A frequency, subtle, almost organic. Not from Earth, but not Zarathian either. It pulsed like a heartbeat. "What is that?" Darren asked. Selleck checked the source. Her eyes widened. "It's coming from the mountain ridge, directly above the Guardian's position." Below, the Guardian rose. Slowly, deliberately. His muscles tightened, not in fear but in readiness. Snow crunched beneath his bare feet as he stepped out into the clearing again. The stars above shimmered and then dimmed. A tear in the sky opened, silent and glowing. Not a ship, not entirely. More like a wound in space, a fracture that bled silver light. And from it descended something tall, spindly, and wrong. The creature hovered above the snow like a ghost carved from obsidian and ash. Its form was shifting, fluid, constantly on the edge of becoming. Where it looked, the air rippled. The Guardian stared up at it, unflinching. "Another species," Braun whispered. "One we've never cataloged." Selleck's voice was barely audible. "And it knows the Guardian." The creature spoke without sound. No words, just intent. It drifted lower, halting just out of reach, tendrils of light spiraling from its limbs like smoke. The Guardian stepped forward, lifting one hand, not in threat, but in defiance. Or was it recognition? Then the air cracked. The blast was silent, but its force shook the trees and flattened snowdrifts in every direction. The Guardian was flung backward, slammed against the base of a tree, his body arching from the impact. He coughed blood, staggered to his feet, and charged. He didn't hesitate, didn't wait for another attack. He struck the creature with all his weight, fists hammering into the shifting surface of the being's chest. Each blow shimmered, as though breaking through layers of time. The creature reacted, not with pain, but with frustration. It coiled around the Guardian like smoke, lifting him from the ground, then hurled him into the frozen river nearby. Water exploded around him, shards of ice slicing his skin as he sank. For a moment, he disappeared beneath the surface. The light above the clearing dimmed. The creature hovered lower, as if confirming its kill. Then the ice shattered from below. The Guardian erupted from the water with a roar so deep it seemed to shake the bones of the forest itself. He launched a spear, fashioned from stone and sinew, at the creature's center. It pierced the shifting form, and for the first time the being recoiled. On the Zarathian ship, alarms flared. "It's bleeding mass," Selleck said in disbelief. The spear worked. "No, Vron corrected. It changed. And indeed, the wound sealed, but the creature was different now, smaller, condensed, as though the Guardian had forced it to stabilize, to become solid. With a cry, the Guardian charged again, tackling the creature and slamming it into the frozen earth. He pounded it, over and over, until the forest was filled with the sound of fists striking what sounded like glass and thunder. The light from the rift above flickered, unstable. The creature released a final, desperate pulse. The Guardian staggered back, blinded. The being lifted from the earth, its body faltering, flickering between dimensions. It looked down at him, not with hate, but with something like respect. Then it vanished, consumed by the rift, which sealed with a sound like inhaling stars. The forest was quiet again. The Guardian collapsed to one knee, gasping. Snow melted around him from the heat of his body. He was shaking, not with fear, but with exhaustion. He looked up at the stars one more time, blood trailing from his mouth, his vision fading. A whisper echoed around him, one only he could hear. It wasn't Zarathian. It wasn't alien. It was ancient. He smiled, just a little, and then slumped forward into the snow. On the ship, the crew was silent. "We are not prepared for this," Selleck said finally. "This planet is not primitive. It's protected." Darwin backed away from the console. "We came to study. We found war, myth, evolution in real time. This is no longer a mission of observation. It's a warning." Vron stared at the frozen image of the Guardian's body, lying still in the clearing. "Begin departure," he ordered. "Seal all records. No transmission leaves this ship." But Selleck began. "No one will believe us," Vron said quietly. "But something will be watching for us now. We've touched something sacred." The engines hummed. The ship began to rise. Below, the snow settled gently over the Guardian's body, wrapping him in white silence. But he was not dead. Not yet. And in the distance, deep in the mountains, another figure stirred. It had seen the battle. It had felt the rift. It began to walk. And the earth, ancient and waiting, prepared for the next chapter in a war as old as the stars.